Let's do this. The Cult of Hockey podcast by the faithful and for the faithful. I'm David Staples of the Edmonton Journal. I'm here today with Bruce McCurdy. Hey, Bruce.
Hey, David. How are you doing tonight?
Oh, I'm doing good, Bruce. I'm doing good. I had a friend who's been razzing me for the last 3 months saying, you are the biggest idiot saying there's going to be NHL playoffs. You're just so wrong. It's never going to happen. That friend wasn't you, Bruce, by the way. You weren't saying that. But you were not saying that. But a couple of my friends were telling me that. I said, no, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. And Bruce, it's going to happen. There's so much now riding on this. Absolutely so much riding on this. New CBA, everything's scheduled, everything's good to go, set to go. It's coming, and I'm excited. Training camp starts tomorrow. It's hard to believe, eh? Wow, here we are.
Starts Monday. By the time this podcast goes up, it'll probably be Monday. So we're on the verge of phase 3, and this is the dangerous phase of the whole thing. I acknowledge your optimism throughout, but I'm still have a little shred of concern of 24 teams making it through phase 3 and 12 of them actually arriving in Edmonton. Well, 11 of them arriving in Edmonton on July 26th. And there's a lot of highway to go through between here and there. And you know how this bloody thing, every day there's been different crap going on in the real world and in the sports world that is not generally all that predictable.
Fair enough. But I mean, the hurdles, Bruce, I got it. Listen, when I heard that they weren't just working on a return to play, that they were working on a new CBA, that wasn't generally, I don't think, reported very well by our media. And when I heard that, I mean, as optimistic as I have been through this whole thing, I was taken aback by that.
Mm-hmm.
So I have got to give full credit to both Gary Bettman and Donald Donald Fair, and the players and the owners for getting it together and coming up with a deal that they can all be happy with, apparently. I mean, Bruce, the final vote for the players was 79%. Of the teams, only 2 voted against it. They're going to the Olympics. Thank God they're going to the Olympics. It just makes me so happy. I just love the Olympics. They're going there. They're going to play the playoffs this year. They hammered this out. They have a deal, which I think, not surprised the players accepted it, Bruce. And we'll get into that in a little bit. But way to go, NHL and Bettman and all you guys. That's a tremendous accomplishment, and it's something we certainly haven't seen for negotiations to remain so quiet and to be so successful. Maybe there's a correlation between the two.
Well, I know that the last 3 CBAs all came at the cost of a half season to full season work stoppage, of hockey being canceled for extended periods of time and leaving longtime fans of the game like this one in a furious rage each time it happened that they couldn't get their shit together and work it out. So this time around, I mean, hats off, they did. And I'll repeat a point I've made maybe more than once on this podcast in recent months, that hockey has already had its work stoppage for the 2020s. And it's ongoing right now. The game absolutely could not afford to have another labor stoppage. And the extension's only 4 years, right? I mean, they just sort of extended the current one from 2020 to 22 when neither side exercised its option to opt out of this one. So it was already good for 2 more years, but 2022, I mean, that would have been a death knell if they got to 2022 and started talking about labor strife and so on again at that stage. Now they've got till 2026, and it sounds like you say it was a reasonably amicable negotiation where they work together like the partners are supposed to be, as opposed to this absolute polarization that we've seen in the previous 3 and even 4 if you want to count the brief 10-day players strike in 1992 that predated all 3 of the longer lockouts that were more owner precipitated. So, hats off to them. They got it done this time. I mean, this work stoppage is painful enough, but this is the only one of the 4 where I'm not mad at anybody. It's just stuff has come down. It's not like they blew it because they couldn't get it together to negotiate. They're all. I mean, we're all behind this COVID eight ball this year, and that's what it took to get labor peace in the NHL. So be it.
Yeah, and they've been, like you say, they've had these work stoppages. The last thing the NHL can afford, in a world where people are increasingly turning away from this, that, and the other thing into a million other things. There's a million things
Yep.
to distract people and their attention. You have to
Mhm.
be very careful now with your audience, I think, and quite respectful, and keep them hooked. If you got your hooks in them, don't let it go. And I'll tell you what, Bruce, if they had been out till January or something like that,
Mhm.
that would have been a huge blow going forward. Now we have this spurt of activity that we can all talk about and get into and be happy about, and then there'll be another break. But in that break there'll be a draft, and there will be signings and stuff like that. Lots of things to keep people interested, and then there'll be the new season, whatever form that takes. And yeah, very well done, because I just think it would have been devastating for hockey. The last thing people want to hear about when everyone I run into is worried about their job, worried about a pay cut,
Yeah.
worried about their survivability of their work. When everyone's like, what the hell's happened and what's going to happen? For people who have billions and tens of millions of dollars to be squabbling, it would be frankly extremely distasteful. And I think we're seeing it in some other sports, and they're really testing their fans. And I don't follow those
Baseball.
other sports
Ooh.
closely enough, Bruce. I just hear about it a little bit, like
Uh-huh.
baseball and
Baseball.
this and that. So like I just don't know. I don't know why people just wouldn't say to hell with you guys, like
Well,
pox on both houses. I'm
three
done.
times in my life that I sort of toyed with the idea of saying the hell with hockey were those three long lockouts when the thread of the game was snapped, and for months on end, while they squabbled about money instead of just playing games and working out how to share the spoils, of which there's always been plenty. So it's good that they got that done this time. I share your concern about the potential rebound of the audience. Uh, you know, like how practical is it going to be to expect to fill 18,000 seat arenas at the price of hockey tickets with the health concerns and the financial concerns of so many of the supporters.
Did you see
That's.
that? Sorry. Did you see that German soccer team, Bruce? The
Hmm.
Berlin soccer team. They have a 21,000 seat arena.
Hmm.
Their plan for the coming year is to test every single fan before every single game and sell out their arena to capacity. The
Holy.
Berlin team in the Bundesliga.
Uh-huh.
And now, of course, there's a major difference between soccer and hockey.
Yep.
Soccer's outdoors, and
Yes.
we've all come to hear, and I'm not a scientist, you're not, but we've all come to hear the general wisdom is of the collective group led by
Hmm.
scientific experts that outdoor activities are a lot safer than indoor activities. Indoor activities are really rife with problems. So that's fascinating to me. That even like they're going to be. They said they want them singing, they want them cheering, and they're going to
Oh,
do
they.
that next year. So
Oh,
wow,
they. What do you have to come to the 4 hours before kickoff to line up for
you
the
have
temperature test? I mean,
day before you have to get a test which the team will
uh-huh.
pay for, and then you
Wow.
have to bring your certificate that you've passed, which I guess would be emailed to you or something like that.
Unreal.
Isn't that's
Yeah, like it's a
astonishing?
gigantic hassle all the same though. Like it's easy to anticipate some fans just saying, screw this noise, it's already expensive, yada yada. I lived without it when it was down. They sort of rationalizing and finding reasons, of which having to line up for a temperature check might be one reason, right?
Although
But
that said, just the joy of being with other people might be
hmm.
immense. Like
Oh
who
yeah,
knows how
yeah.
that's
There's
going to
nothing
feel?
like being in a live hockey bar and at a good game, man. There's nothing like it.
Yeah. So we're in this podcast. We're going to talk about these little bit more about the CBA. We'll talk about the Oilers opening day of training camp tomorrow. We'll talk about some players taking the opt out clause, and we'll talk about Zack Kassian's photo op with the member of the Hells Angels
News,
motorcycle
news.
gang. Bruce, just quickly, let's just wrap up the CBA. The one
Sure.
thing that struck me was Elliot Friedman did some really good reporting on this, as he usually does. So 79% of the players voted in favor of it, 29 of 31 owners. The interesting thing was, if they had gone into this last year of the CBA, what the ramifications were going to be for the players. And what they were looking at, here's what Elliot says, quote, both sides were looking at a 2020-2021 salary cap in the $65 million range, and escrow on top of that, and I'm adding that in there, escrow on top of that, anywhere from 35 to 70%. It can be adjusted upward during a season if revenues are low. So when I think, like, the players, I can see why they voted for this, Bruce. And you know, I think the owners, they have got to save their investment. I can see why the owners did it too. They need the team's values, the value of the franchises to stay high. They need this entity to stay vital and going. But for the players, this was a huge thing. I mean, they could be looking at what's 70% of $65 million. Let's just
Most
figure
of
that
it.
out.
Yeah, it's
About
about
50
45
million,
million. It's about 45 million. It would
$45
take them
million.
down to 20 million in actual payroll for your entire team. Like that's
Wow.
that. But I mean, just cutting it back to 65 million, I mean, the only way they'd be able to do that is with actual wage rollbacks before the escrow,
Yes.
right? Like they had in 1990, was it 2004? They did the 24% wage rollbacks for the guys that had existing contracts. And then escrow was sort of, uh, another clawback over and above that. Because otherwise, I mean, you couldn't just say, well, now next year our salary cap is down by 20% because teams are committed. I mean, you look at any payroll and you're apt to find 15 guys under contract for a total of $70 million, and the team's got 10 million to spend on 8 guys, right? Well, if you've already committed 70 million, and all of a sudden the league tells you that, well, you're limited to 65 million, and oh yeah, you need to sign more players, and you can't even pay the ones you got. I mean, that would have been just craziness. So there's some details probably missing there, which I would expect a wage rollback would have been one. But I do understand there's a 10% rollback, but a temporary one by the players in 2021.
And 20% escrow. So they're probably
And
going to lose
20%
about
is.
30% of their salary, like of the 81 million. So
Mm-hmm.
that's a big hit as well, but
Yep.
it's less than they probably faced under the other scenario. And so they get
Mm-hmm.
some certainty of about, 70% of their salary for the next,
55 million. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
that's.
for the next few years. And that's probably looking pretty good
Mm-hmm.
when faced with the alternative in a league that may or may not have fans in the stands. So yeah, they went for some security, but frankly, who wouldn't go for some security going forward with whatever job they're doing in life right now? So good
Yeah,
deal for the playoffs. And first, let's go to training camp. Any surprises for
sure.
you in the players that were listed?
By the Oilers?
Yeah.
Yeah, not really. I mean, I took a stab at the projected roster back in late May when the league first announced its return to play strategy, and they said there'd be 28 skaters and as many goalies as you like. And in the end, the Oilers have 28 skaters. Well, I got 3, 4 guys wrong in my projection, but there's always a cusp of guys. They were starting with a roster, an NHL roster of 25 players that included 15 forwards, 8 defensemen, and 2 goalies. That was what they had on the big club when things shut down on March the 12th. Now, a couple of those guys were on injured reserve. The other 23 were on the active roster. So obviously, the expectation is all of those guys will be invited to camp, and no doubt they were, until, of course, we had the withdrawal for personal health reasons of veteran defenseman Mike Green that the Oilers had just traded for additional defense depth in the playoffs, which they no longer will have.
What did you think of Green deciding to opt out?
Uh, I, I, I can't lie, I'm a little choked at the situation, but the situation, I mean, that's just luck, right? That's just the rub of the green or the bounce of the puck. The guy's got a legit reason to not expose himself. He had a very bad virus in 2018-19 that attacked his liver, It cost him the first 9 games of the season. I remember when he first was out, and it sounded bad at the time. I think, holy hell, I wonder if he's ever going to play again. Missed the first 9 games of the season. He came in, he played, he got hurt, an unrelated injury during the season. And then early March last year, he had a recurrence of the liver virus, and he missed the last 17 games of the season. So he had to deal with the virus in 2018 and in 2019. Do you think that's a guy who wants to deal with another virus in 2020? I don't think so. And I would well imagine, without having any details, but I would well imagine that his doctor recommended that he not play, just based on
Yeah,
the outline we know.
I think for a lot of the players, like if I was to guess, I think a lot of players will be safer in the bubble. They're going to be a lot less likely to get COVID in the bubble than they will be if they just stayed home. But the exception to that is a guy like Mike Green, who is taking probably extreme care of himself to self-isolate. And someone like that who's had some health problems, he's probably safer outside the bubble. And I just think this opt-out clause was fantastic idea by the NHL. Absolutely essential.
Mm-hmm.
You know that most of the players are not going to take this.
Right.
And it's just going to be a small minority, but you really do have to let those people decide, let them stay out. And it just takes all the pressure off everybody else. They can then proceed happily with their games. You know, everyone's decided to be there. Everyone's made that choice. I want in. I'm not forced in. I'm there. I'm taking a stand and I'm going for it. That kind of buy-in is important. But the ability to buy out and to opt out is great. So good.
Well, they were told they could do so without any repercussions.
Yeah.
And that doesn't account for repercussions. I mean, I'm hearing some trash talking from dark corners of the internet and so on about the player. But I would like to think that most reasonable thinking people, when presented with the circumstances of Mike Green's recent past, dealing twice with a dangerous virus, that they might rethink that position and say, yeah, this is one of those cases where it's unfortunate, and he's probably upset that he can't play, but it's just had to be this way, and it is unfortunate.
What nasty things are people saying?
A 5-letter word starting with P. I read a few times on.
That he's chicken, essentially.
Yeah, that one, and just reactionary stuff and I don't even know who, it was like, I read the release and all the replies to it, so it wasn't necessarily people I knew or anything, but you see that and you shake your head at the best of times. But like I say, especially when we know the circumstances of what he's dealt with, you think a guy is right in his rights to be concerned about virus? I sure do.
Anyone, like we all know our own health situations very well, and we've all been going through this in our own heads and taking the necessary precautions for ourselves. I don't begrudge anyone doing that. I think that would be it's the worst possible position to take, to begrudge people that opportunity. So, Bruce, I want to ask you
one
other
thing. Thinking ill of other people is pretty common in this world just now. But in the case of Mike Green, my original reaction was, well, see you later, Mike Green. He's an unrestricted free agent at the end of the season. There's no way the Oilers will want to bring him back and have that uncomfortable dressing room meeting in next training camp. But I've even rethought that I'm sure the players understand, because of, his specific circumstances. It's real. He's got health issues. So
were you a little Were you a little ticked about the draft pick? Like, we only got 2 games out of it. Is that what you said initially?
The circumstances. The situation is what I'm ticked at. And the situation is the Oilers gave up a perfectly good draft choice for a depth player, who they no longer have. And they've lost the draft choice for basically nothing. And it's just, like I say, the rub of the green. They got a shitty bounce and went against them, and they lost a draft pick for it. It's not the first time that's happened either, by the way, but I do not bear a grudge against Mike Green the way I do against the NHL's league office for the wrong-headed executive compensation plan that cost the Oilers 2 higher draft picks than that in the fairly recent past. But that's
well, maybe we won't have to pay the Milan Lucic draft pick, Bruce. Maybe we can get out of it. I haven't heard word on that. So, but Bruce, like, if I'm completely honest about Mike Green, listen, I'm not a fan of the player. And what I saw in 2 games didn't encourage me. And certainly what I read from Detroit, people who watched that team closely did not encourage me. The stat line, he just really looks like he's lost a step. That said, a veteran player might be able to help in the playoffs, can all maybe help in the playoffs. But I was worried, Bruce, that actually the coaching staff might be invested in this player, and the GM might be invested in this player, and he might play ahead of players like Matt Benning and Caleb Jones or Chris Russell. I don't think Mike Green is close to those guys, honestly, at this point. And so, just hockey wise, forget anything else, just hockey wise, I would way rather have those other players in the lineup than Mike Green. And I would probably rather have William Lagesson or Evan Bouchard in the lineup too. Listen, we've all seen these D-men at the end of their careers, Bruce, who can't keep up anymore. I've seen it too much. And I've seen coaches and GMs get still invested in those players and still send them out there. And that was my worry, that's what I was going to be watching in this year's playoffs. So in just hockey-wise, I don't see this as an issue for the team. I think they have a lot of better players than Green at this point.
Well, and that's the other thing to consider is what we've just been talking about the virus that cost them both ends of the 2018-19 season and the knee injury that cost him a dozen games in the middle. Last year he played 43 games. He did get 26 points. Not bad. And then this year, he was just not the same guy. 11 points in 48 games. I mean, that's for him, with all the points he's put up in his career, just nowhere near his game. And you have to think, well, I wonder how much that virus took out of the guy. He signed a 2-year contract. He got sick in the first year. He came back to play out his contract. I mean, I wouldn't be totally surprised if he just retired at the end of the summer,
Oh, that's,
age
I think,
34. I mean, he's got a pile of money in the bank. He, it might not be easy to find a job elsewhere, and then maybe the new COVID world will help spur his decision as well. I mean, it's unfortunate, but you can just looking at his box cards, you can see he fell off an absolute cliff in 1920, and it was right after he had that virus. So
I never understood why they traded for him in the first place, honestly. Like, it didn't make sense. Like, you have all these guys. You got Matt Benning, and just, do they really not like Matt Benning at all? Like,
I didn't mind it, because to me it gave him 8 defensemen, it gave him 4 righties, 4 lefties, it gave him lots of options in the third pairing. That's what I was going to write about tonight going into training camp. Except for now, I'm writing about how they're gonna cobble together a third pairing out of 3 guys instead of 4, because they had 2 veterans, 2 younger guys. They had 2 puck movers, 2 more stay-at-home guys. They had lots of options of how they could do that third pairing. And there's nothing like experience, and Mike Green had a lot of playoff experience. Only James Neal has more on the Oilers, and so they'll do without that. So they'll have.
There's nothing like experience, Bruce, except for a young talent that's ready to blossom, i.e. Caleb Jones.
I hear you. Yeah, I hear you.
So, I want to see that. That's what I'm looking forward to seeing.
Yeah, the coach, I would say a coach would like to have experience to draw on.
Yes.
But he's, instead of having 2 righties and 2 lefties to make his third pairing, he has Matt Benning and he has Chris Russell and Caleb Jones, both of whom are capable of flipping and playing on the right side. But that's less than ideal of having, a spare part in each position as Holland had built the team at the deadline.
Yeah, I don't know who we'll see in the third pairing. It could be Russell and Benning, Jones and Benning, maybe. It's hard to imagine Chris Russell won't be in the lineup. Listen, he's going to be in the lineup. The coach is going to go with the old veteran, and he should, I think. So it's going to be Jones or Benning, and I would prefer to see Jones personally, but I'd be okay if I see Benning too. So that's how I see it.
Yeah, well, I think he'll play Russell, at least at first, for the same reason I think he will play James Neal. I just think that playoff experience is going to buy Neal's ticket into the lineup to start the playoffs.
Yeah, Neal, he already talked about that heavy line that he liked. Neal, Kara, and Chason. So, so then it's who's going to be with McDavid? That's going to be interesting. I think Ennis and Kassian, right? Could be the guys. But the question is,
Kassian.
Will Athanasiou be in the press box, or is Nygaard going to be in the press box? Probably. Maybe we'll see Athanasiou with with Sheahan and Archibald on the third line. And I don't know. I'd rather see Nygaard. I think he's more of a, he's got his head around checking. He's not minus 50,000 in the last two
Yeah.
seasons like
Well,
FNSU is.
again, you have depth. Like they had 5 lines and 4 defense pairs.
Yeah,
And all the left wingers shot left, and all the right wingers shot right, and all the left defensemen shot left, and all the right defensemen shot right. It was like a perfect depth chart. And then lost a guy from the bottom of it. But Green was the one guy they lost from the roster. I mean, you're talking about the overall roster. The other guys, sort of the marginal, sort of invited extra guys that are sort of destined to be black aces. And I got a couple of them wrong. I had Marcus Granlund on my original list just for his experience and his ability to play multiple positions. And even then, I expressed doubts because he had signed a contract in the KHL. And rather than him opting out, they just didn't invite him. Or
good
it may have
idea.
been a mutual decision by the two, but by doing
Yeah,
that, they opened up a spot for Cooper Marody. Well, great. That's good for Cooper Marody. The other guy I thought might be on the team, and I actually had him on my original list and then took him out for Thomas Yurcho, who I thought remembered was, recovered from shoulder surgery. But in the end, they did go with the younger man, Ryan. So they brought on, and to replace Mike Green on the full depth chart, they brought in Philip Broberg. So of the guys that I originally projected, which I sort of erred on the side of veterans that I thought the team might do, no, they've gone for the young guys and all of Broberg, McLeod, uh, there Rodrigue and all the young goalies because there's no limit on goalies. They brought in all 3 of the young guys and they didn't bring Shane Starrett, which was a surprise. But maybe they know something about his health that you and I don't know because he had health issues all year.
he did. He was never right. So
So
maybe he's not right now.
the roster, at least the bottom end of the roster is younger than I expected, and that's fine by me. Be a good experience for those young fellows to be in the real. I mean, playoffs is a boot camp at the best of times, but with the bubble in place and so on, it'll be an intense hockey experience for these young fellows. You'd have to think, and hopefully they'll gain some benefit even if they don't play any games.
Indeed. Bruce,
Hmm.
I don't have much more to say about the roster myself, other than I think this roster is. So I say if the Hawks and the Oilers played 4 times, the Oilers would win 3 of those 4 times, and the other
Okay.
time the Hawks. Then I think in the second series the Oilers also have should be the favorite in the second series that they
Why do
play.
you say that? Because they're going to be playing against one of the top 4 teams in the Western Conference.
I just like the
These
Oilers.
second
I
series.
just think this
Yeah.
is a hell of a team. You have
Yeah, I
McDavid and
mean, I do
Draisaitl.
like their chances. I just don't see them being listed as favorites
Fair enough.
against a top conference team. They may well be well positioned to pull off the upset,
It,
but it would be considered one.
Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl are ready to win, is why I say this. And the main issue is goaltending.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've seen both Smith and Koskinen have really great games and crappy ones. So if you have
Mm-hmm.
one goalie and you're just riding that one guy, you might be in big trouble, right?
Yep.
Because if he's crappy, then you're done. But you have 2 guys at this point who can kind of alternate. So if Smith sucks, you're going to lose that game probably. But then you can come back next game with Koskinen and you have a chance to win. So even in net, although that's the biggest question mark and it's huge, it's not completely bad news. It's kind of interesting news. It's going to keep us on the edge of our seats. Other than that, Bruce, this is an excellent hockey team. They've got depth. They've got defensive depth. They've got good defensemen. They've got good forwards up and down the lineup, and they've got the 2 best players in the NHL this year, probably. So, yeah, I think that they would beat they should be heavy favorites, honestly, against the Blackhawks. And in the next round, good luck to the team that plays them because this is a really good hockey team.
Yeah, well, they've certainly got lots of pieces, and as you say, the 2 big ones. I mean, we're at the point now. Connor McDavid's the same age now as Wayne Gretzky was when he won his first Stanley Cup, 1984. He was his 5th year in the NHL. He was 23 years old. He turned 23 that January.
Yeah.
And he was uh, uh, not saying Connor McDavid is Wayne Gretzky. Nobody is Wayne Gretzky. I'm just saying they're of that age. I watched that team grow, not old, but mature together. And the difference between the Oilers at 21, even the great Oilers at 21 versus that team at 23, and all those guys, and Draisaitl's in the exact same area code at age 24, and ready to, not just star in the league, but win in the league. It's a big step, but I'm happy with the main engines driving the Oilers. How could you not be?
All right, I just corrected a mistake in my story here, so just give me a second. Bruce, Zack Kassian got a little bit of trouble this week. He posed for a photograph with a Hell's Angel. What did you make of that yourself?
I saw that picture and I thought those are tremendous mutton chop sideburns that Zach's got on right now. Brought me back a little bit happy memories of his appearance in the 2017 playoffs when those mutton chops were the leading edge of a pretty domineering player for especially the San Jose series. It's a picture. He posed with a fan. I mean, you're somewhere with some guy and he asks you to pose for a selfie. If you're a hockey player, what are you going to do? I mean, you look a little bit askance at it and you say, well, I guess that's Kassian, but I mean, holy hell! I mean, I'm not going to lose any sleep over that.
I just think this is one of the worst things that we do to people is celebrities. Like they pose for a picture with someone, and it's someone either wearing the wrong T-shirt or being in the wrong person, or they're in the wrong club himself. And they come on, the Hell's Angels is a pretty rotten, gang of people. It's. I'm no fan of the Hell's Angels. Who is? But come on, he's a hockey player posing with a fan. You're posing with fans all the time. You got people coming up to you. Now maybe he even knew. Apparently they're both Hardy riders, so he might have known him
Oh,
that he's in the game. But even then,
he's
like
on
just
Instagram or something. But
Zach's relating to him as a hockey player fan. That's what I'm assuming. Hockey player fan, not someone cozying up to the Hell's Angels. And I just give people I just think, look, I'm going to give you a break, Zack Kassian. You're doing your job
uh,
as an athlete to pose with a
mm-hmm.
fan for a photo. You're trained to do that. That is your training. Now, some people say, well, in this era of COVID, you should change your training and not get too close to fans. So
Yeah, the social
okay, fair enough.
distancing is a legit quibble, but it's a quibble.
It's a
You know,
quibble. Yeah,
it's
they
it's
weren't
you know,
hugging.
no,
Yeah,
I mean, it wasn't ideal for that reason, but I guess if you're supposed to be setting an example, then you need to be thinking about that kind of stuff.
yeah.
I don't
Let's
know.
just
It's
take it
on
easy
my
on
list
people,
of
though.
concerns about the Oilers.
Yeah,
That's a long, long way down the list.
yeah. I like the Oilers' reaction to it. Their reaction is basically like Zach posing with a fan. Can we move on? Yeah,
Yeah, really.
I hope.
Yeah,
I
that's
hope that we can move on from that. Uh, and actually, I think by far the most people online were not upset about that at all. I didn't see much upset at all. Alrighty, Bruce. Have we covered everything that we're going to talk about, or is anything else on our list for tonight? I think that
unless you
might be
wanted
it.
to touch on the last few prospects we covered.
Let's
Uh,
just leave that. We'll
okay, we
have
can
another
catch
pod.
that up.
Yeah, we can have another podcast right away on the final group of prospects, perhaps,
Okay.
and we'll talk about those guys at that time. Alrighty, training camp tomorrow. No one can
Great.
attend. No one can watch. No one can know anything, but it's apparently
Yeah, I
happening.
mean, what are we going to find out? Like, that's what I'm like. I'm used to sort of hanging around. Like, if they don't let you in the arena, you hang around on Twitter, and and you got people like Maddie and Rashog and Reed Wilkins, Stoffer and so on, reporting out of the rink.
I think we'll get
And
that maybe.
I don't know. I don't know what we're going to get. I'm kind of looking forward to it, but with some trepidation that I think it might be a cone to silence to some degree. The
Well,
Oilers themselves will have strong control over the media content we do see. So we're going to see a lot of canned and antiseptic, is that the right word, type interviews with sanitized, maybe it's a better word, interviews and controlled information. And I don't know about how much we're going to get of the nitty gritty stuff that the hardcore, ink-stained wretches have been chasing all these years. I kind of feel for those guys. A guy like Matty has been in the rink forever, right? How's he supposed to do what he's always done under these circumstances?
Yeah, they got to adapt, just like everyone
Yeah.
else in the COVID world, and
Yes. Yeah.
and they got to adapt. I think actually
Adapt or
they might
adapt or
allow them, Bruce,
perish,
in the
eh?
press box.
Yeah.
I
Well,
think I read that they're going to be allowed in the games in the press box. So
okay.
maybe in the practices they can go to the press box as well. I don't know. They can't sit down low by the boards or whatever they might normally do, but they can sit up in the press box and they can watch. So they'll know the lines and the line combos. So we'll find out. This is something that we'll find out.
As
The
soon as
thing I hope
tomorrow.
we don't get is the news Montreal just got, like a bunch of Montreal Canadians have apparently tested positive. So I'm hoping that we don't get that kind of
Okay.
news in
I did not
Edmonton.
hear that.
And
That's my concern about the 24 teams writ large, is you're going to get three or four of those circumstances. And having seen what's gone on in the, Major League Soccer, for instance, where they had two teams pull out of their tournament because of team outbreaks, you know. So I don't know how much of that the hockey format could survive, but
well, they've got lots of players on the Canadians, and speaking, it's horrible if anyone gets this disease.
yeah,
Let me say that to preface this, but speaking as an Oilers fan, as long as it's not the Oilers,
well,
uh, you know, let's hopefully our Oilers players are going to be really smart and careful and lucky and not get infected during the this last stage of it. And we'll
Edmonton's been doing good, until this last little while. I wonder if we let our guard down a little bit,
Oh, I
but
think so.
it's
I think
because
so.
the results were so good, so good, so good for so long.
Well,
And
it's
now all of a sudden it's, we've had a few worrisome signs in the last little while, and we need to get it together as a community a little bit, maybe.
people are just really out. We're trying to live our lives.
Yeah,
We did the thing. We flattened the curve, and
yeah.
now we're trying to get back as we need to do, get back and live our lives. So there's going to be more cases, and we'll see. I suspect that this is going to be the last big bump in terms of outbreaks. Now that everyone's in camp, um, there's going to be stronger controls on the players, ever stronger controls on the players, and more seriousness preached to them. They're young guys, right? They need to be told in firm and no uncertain terms about how you're going to live your life the next few weeks. And I think that we'll see as this goes along, we're going to see, there was the initial burst, wasn't there, of cases when the guys, there hasn't been anything too much in a couple of weeks. Is that fair?
Mhm.
Since the Austin Matthews thing and there
Right.
was the Tampa Bay thing, since that outburst, hasn't been a lot of news. Now, maybe it's just been kept quiet, which is a real
Yeah, there
possibility
was a
too.
couple of teams where I heard there was a couple of members here and there, and of course nobody was named except Austin Matthews. But it was uh, it's, it's this phase three that has me, antsy. I think if we get to phase four, all the teams are in two places and not 24 different places all over this forsaken continent. That we can breathe a little bit easier. And I know Ryan Rashog at TSN, he's been hammering on this point for weeks/months, and I think his reporting's been very balanced, very big picture outlook. And he's all along been saying, this phase three, this is a big, big hurdle. And I've listened to his reasoning, and I agree with it. Like, he's made a strong case as to why that would be so. Um,
Yeah, there was someone, I think Friedman said the thing he keeps hearing, Elliot Friedman said the thing he keeps hearing again and again and again is the quote is, we've just got to get to the bubble. And
yeah.
it's the world is now at a point where everything sounds like a sci-fi movie. We just got to
Mhm.
get to the bubble and we'll be okay.
Yeah, and you got to get to. I mean, I'm not sure where all the teams' camps are, but I'd like to hope that some of them are nowhere close to the actual cities they represent, especially some of those southern cities in the states where there's,
Well, in California, is there any California teams?
no California. All the California teams
Yeah, they've
missed
got a
even
huge
the
outbreak.
12-team playoffs. They had a huge outbreak of terrible hockey in California this year. So they're off the hook.
Yeah,
I shouldn't laugh, but those California teams have caused us so much grief that I have to admit I've taken a little bit
yeah,
of of
yeah.
of
We hate St.
joy. a joy in their malicious joy in their joint downfall in 1920.
We hates them, which is
So
my
I've been
mandatory
looking
Lord
up
of
at
the
the three
Rings.
California team in the standings for so long, and
Oh
now they're
God, I
all
hate those
down there.
teams. Yeah, I don't hate the Sharks, but I hate the Kings and the Ducks.
Yeah,
Okay, I can hate the
that's
Sharks though too. If they beat the Oilers. All right, Bruce. Thanks for talking tonight.
yeah. Thanks for listening, everyone.
And in the meantime and in between times, this has been another edition of the Cult of Hockey podcast.